Traveling with the queen of rock and roll. The COVID hit, now we're stuck at home. Instead of sitting on our ass, we came up with this sick podcast. Crewicide, Crewicide. Out of my way, you're in my line. Crewicide, Crewicide. The main four picks and sticks all night. Crewicide, Crewicide. Ha 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 ha. Crewicide, Crewicide. No autographs tonight. Can I get a set list, man? Hey, set list, please.
Welcome to Crewicide Live. It is a huge, huge show today. I mean, it does not get bigger than this. I'm not even joking. Yeah, you know, I'm putting it on a bit just because it's a podcast, but like, we are amongst friends. Of course, the beautiful and lovely Annie Stoic.
Hello.
And today we have with us, I don't even know how to introduce you. Let's just start with a man that needs no introduction in this business. Somebody, I literally heard his name before I even got into this business. That's how long I've been hearing this guy's name. And that's how much of a legend he is. Please welcome the one, the only, Mr. Gary Hood.
Hey.
Yay.
What's going on,
up,
buddy?
How you doing?
I'm all right.
That was some introduction.
Well, there's so much more to it because now I finally get a chance to, like, you know.
Where did you hear my name before you met me? Where did you hear it before you started working?
Well, we've gone over this story once or twice. I know this is going to be a special one, Annie. You're going to have to bear with us. But
yeah, of course.
Basically, I started this band behind me. You see this little head behind me? It says Dead People. You can barely make it out, but that's my old band name. And my bassist was a guy from Long Island. And he goes, I'm with Dead People one day. I'm like, yo, I got hired to work at SIR. I'm going to work at SIR. I'm going to try and be a roadie. And he goes, I know a guy who works at SIR. His name's Gary Hood. And I go, oh, yeah? He goes, I don't know if he works there no more, but I know him from Dragon Studios in Long Island.
Yeah. Okay.
And his name was Bobby. His name's Bobby Sholem, and he's the bass player in my band, Jesus Knievel. We used to play in Dead People together. Before that, he was in a band called Tortured by Voices. But apparently he had spent some time with you and knew you from the Long Island scene.
I know the name of that. I know Tortured by Voices. I remember him.
And Bobby was the bass player in that. And one day, maybe we can all have a drink and talk about the link between Bobby, Gary Hood, and Beef. But before I started working at SIR, he told me that he knew you and that you were there. And he said, I heard he works on stage somewhere, you know? And I was like, whoa. So he was the first person I ever heard of going into it. And I was like, I got to meet this guy. And sure enough, you're on tour with, some of the greatest. I mean, in 2005, we could start the timeline in a minute. But at that time, you were real busy when I came in. So there's a little history for us. And then I guess down the line, he ended up, hanging out with Annie when you worked for Joan, Yeah.
Yes. Was that the Styx tour or the Heart tour? Both, right?
I did the Heart tour with Joan.
Right. And then you broke your leg too, right? No, you hurt your knee. How's your knee?
My knee is fine. It took a couple months, but it was a long slog. But
Man, hazards at the job.
Well, that's something we share in common with the tech leg. the black and blue tech leg of the Blackhearts.
Although Gary was not in a mosh pit the night before a show.
It was crowd surfing. I think it was just like a freak accident, right? It was just like you stepped weird onto the stage, I think.
Yeah,
right?
Well, it slowly progressed. At the Jones Beach show, I got hit on the side of my leg with a case in the dark, a low riding case. It was like a low
I remember
case.
you telling me that, yeah.
And I kind of moved my leg funny, and then it hurt a little bit. And then the next day, I remember going out to meet you in Penn Station. We were going to go to the Jersey show, and it was hurting more, and we had to walk that day quite a bit from the train station to the gig. And I was like, well, this is really starting to hurt. Then we did some other show somewhere else, and it was getting worse. We had a day off. Then we were in Little
Tulsa.
Rock. It was in Tulsa. Then I think we were in Little Rock.
I like Tulsa.
And then I twisted it going out. It got worse, and then going out to get Joan at the top of the show to give her a guitar. I twisted my leg then, and it twisted, and I heard it go. Then I had to jump out. I had to bounce out on one leg to give her a guitar at the top of the show. And she's just looking at me like, what the fuck happened to you? Oh, I was like, Joan, I'm fucked up. And she's like, oh my God. And she just looked at me as I bounced back on one leg to the tech area. Oh, that sucked.
Mm-hmm. I remember, oddly, Zach was coming in literally the day that you like really hurt your leg. So like we were able to get, but I remember I was like, go in the back lounge, put your leg up, ice it. Like, yeah.
The next day in Memphis, I remember calling you and saying, I said, listen, you have to do me a favor. Somebody's got to get me a pair of crutches. I could do the load-in, I'll get everything set up, but I can't walk on my leg. It's so much pain. So you got me crutches. I was like,
and the funny story with that too is I asked the runner to go get crutches and bring them to Annie, and she put them in Ann Wilson's room. Luckily, no one was there yet, but I'm like, why would you go into an artist's dressing room?
You know why? Because it wasn't that runner. It wasn't Keegan. That's right. Because we had the greatest runner of all time, and his name was Keegan, and I think I'm just going to reference him as the greatest runner of all time.
All right.
But wow, that's insane, man. Fucking, so it was more like a step-by-step process of actually like getting on crutches.
Yeah, slow. It was a slow burn, man. It was
not like that for me.
Yeah.
Gary, I wanted to kind of get into before we got into some of your other major clients that you've worked for, because I know Annie wants to hear about that. Let's go back to the early days of your career. You want to tell all the beautiful people out there exactly what maybe I don't know. For me, it was Cheap Trick. I talk about it all the time. When I worked at CB's, like I always had this thing saying to myself, I want to be a dog. I want to be a road dog. I worked for a local band called Downpour, who was pretty locally well-known. They opened up for a lot of bands. They got some good recognition, and I kind of fell in with them, and they let me like set up guitars. And sorry, that's the squirrels in the back making noises.
Squirrel?
Yeah, they run right up on my ledge because the pipe for the to go up to the roof is right next to my window. So I leave nuts and shit for them all the time. Yeah, so for me, this band Downpour got me in, and it was like I was playing, with Eric, Eric Z, who's now Nashville SIR. We were always playing, but then Downpour really kind of gave me a break, put me on stage over in Long Island at the Vanderbilt when they opened up for Soulfly, and I was like, I can do this. Then CBGB's was like, before that, Cheap Trick loaded in for the Music for Hangovers tour, 1999, 25th anniversary. And they brought in such a setup that they hired me, my brother, who you know, and my buddy John Somerville, Johnny Winters. And I was just hooked. And from then on, it was like, I want to be a roadie. Was there like an actual like moment for you when you were playing? Because we all know you're a musician. If you're not, you're going to find out tonight.
Yeah.
But was there like a moment where you were like, I want to do this professionally?
Not really. There really wasn't a moment. I just kind of fell into it. I wasn't even aware really that there was such a profession as, roadie. I just, when as a kid, I used to go to see all the shows a lot at the Westbury Music Fair in New York.
Absolutely. My mom
in the
too.
Round.
Oh yeah.
I used to be fascinated with because that was a circulating stage where it was in the round and it would spin around, so you would see the front of the band and then it would turn around and you see the back of everything and you'd see everything that was going on in back, and it kept on spinning around. And I saw so many shows there, so many shows. Johnny Cash, Roy Orbison. I saw Cheap Trick there. I saw the Allman Brothers there. I saw Frank Sinatra there. I saw B.B. King probably 15 times there. I mean, all these bands. So I would go and be so fascinated with what was going on in back of the stage with that, because you would see it. And then that was probably the first time I was really like, that's really cool. I just loved concerts. I really loved concerts. And I spent, I didn't start doing roadie stuff until I was like 30.
Wow. I thought you were doing it way before then.
No, I spent my 20s seriously working on my own band. And that included like playing at CBGB's, the Continental, at Coney Island High and the Nightingale and all these other places, constantly with different
bands.
And the bank, and going in and really leading a band and booking the shows and getting the gear there and setting, and doing all that shit. And then just by chance, at one point somebody said that they were hiring at SIR, and I was like, it's kind of like what I wanted to do. I wanted to get closer off of Long Island and to New York City to try to infiltrate the scene a little bit, because it was so hard for a Long Island musician in a Long Island based band to try to get into the city and come off as something of the city, It was very segregated, like you were the bridge and tunnel type of thing, that kind of prejudice, So I was just like, I heard that the gig was delivering stuff to venues and clubs and studios. I said, that'd be great. It'd probably get me closer to where I want to be in music. So that's what I jumped at SIR, the opportunity to work there. And within taking a job as a driver on the night shift, and within 7 months, by luck, I was on tour with Johnny Winter, the blues guitar legend. Just by luck, I managed to bullshit my way into the I was giving a cartage with their crew chief and their monitor guy, who weren't getting along too well. They were on tour. They had a lot of friction. The monitor guy was somebody I knew well, who was a real negative vibe type of person at SIR. His name was Smitty, who's no longer with us. God rest his soul.
I know. I've heard so many stories about the man. I never met him, but I heard so many stories. Continue.
Well, yeah, he could be a real jerk. That's all I could say. So I realized that why these guys, and I'm driving them in a van out to Long Island to the Paramount Theater to do a show with Johnny Winter, and I'm bringing that gear in the van, and these two guys, the crew chief, who was Johnny's guitar tech, and Smitty, and they are not getting along, and we are stuck in traffic in the rain, going through the Midtown Tunnel. And
traffic?
Yeah.
In the Midtown Tunnel.
What?
Yeah, in the rain, Friday night, going out to Long Island and so the crew chief guy, his name was Mark Endres. He said, "Well, I sure could use some weed right now." And I was like, "Hey, if you got a paper, I got some weed." He's like, "I got a paper." So as we're going through the Midtown Tunnel, I'm holding the steering wheel with my pinkies, and I'm rolling this joint with my thumbs and my index finger. And by the time we get out of the tunnel, it was done. And I was like, as soon as we get past the toll, I light it up. He's like, "Wow, that's pretty good. That's amazing." He's like, "You do that pretty well. Can you mix monitors?" And I said, "Yeah, I can mix monitors." And I had never done monitors ever. And he said, "Okay, great." And I didn't realize he was kind of like offering me this guy's job. So we got to the gig, I dropped him off, and he took my number. And then a couple months later, Johnny Winter was doing a show at the Bottom Line, and this guy called me, and he said he wanted me to come by because I told him I had a couple of guitars that were just like Johnny's, and he wanted to use them to sound check Johnny's rig. But Johnny always came with his guitar at the show, and he wanted to have something with the same pickups in it to sound check. So I said, "Yeah, sure." So I went down to the Bottom Line, and I brought him to him, and he's just like, "Hey, we're going on tour. Do you want to be the monitor guy?" And I was like, "Okay, man." And that's how it started. And I went on. yeah, we did a couple week tour of the Midwest or whatever, and then luckily, again, my first tour, it ended with 2 shows at the Bottom Line, and they recorded it, and it turned out to be Johnny Winter's last live record on Virgin Records, and I got album credit, you know.
Nice.
And I didn't know how to mix monitors. I had no idea. I had never been really on the road before, and I never mixed monitors. But I got one of the rehearsal guys, this guy Ethan, at SIR, to kind of show me the board one day. Mm-hmm. You know, I kind of just got through it. I mean, it wasn't pretty. But Johnny didn't really require any monitors. It was just a bass player needed a little drum, and the drummer needed a little bass. But Johnny never used real monitors. So he just used it. The house. So it was a cake gig, but I couldn't have been greener. And I had to drive too. I got roped into driving the manager's car behind the tour bus because they didn't want to get a trailer. They put the gear in the bays and they put all the merch in this guy's car, and I got to drive the car. So after the gig, I'd have to drive to the next show in this fucking car loaded with merch. Up, you know, to the gills, and you know, but I was the manager wasn't a very nice guy, and he was did stuff like that, with just, you know, inhumane stuff. But I was like, I don't care, you know, whatever it takes for me to be on tour with Johnny Winter right now is like the coolest thing I've ever done, you know. So I was like, I was just gonna keep on taking a bite of that sandwich, that shit sandwich, you know, and it worked out. So that led to other things, but it was a couple years after that until I started getting other things. SIR gave me a lot of things as far as tech stuff goes almost immediately after that. Before that, they didn't give me anything. It was just I was just another dork from Long Island that they were just like, hey, let's just drive this guy into the ground, you know. And I kind of passed the test at that point, and I started getting more stuff.
Nice.
Wow. Yeah.
Crazy. That's pretty much like the equivalent of me doing the Joan gig. Johnny Winter is like, holy shit. I mean, you're a little bit older than us, you know. To you, Johnny Winter is like guitar god, you know.
Guitar
to a
god,
lot of
absolutely.
people. That's like a dream gig. I mean, holy
it was
shit.
Great, and I got to, you know, get a lot of pointers from him and just be around, you know, a guy like that was.
I mean, to be in that mentoring type of capacity, almost, you know. Wow.
It wasn't quite that, but it was still enough, you know, for my first taste of like dealing with like this level of roadiness, you know. Like my first thing out of the gate was like working with this legend that I was in awe of because I was a major fan, you know, because I'm a blues fanatic, you know, so I was already a Johnny Winter fan before that, you know, so it was cool.
Nice. And speaking of, not really, I don't know if it's an album credit, but you did play an instrument on a Cheap Trick song, didn't you?
I did. I back in 2017, I jammed with them on stage. I was on tour with them and Foreigner with Jason Bonham's Led Zeppelin Experience. I was Jason Bonham's Led Zeppelin Experience guitar tech, and I was also playing the harmonica parts on all of the songs that Led Zeppelin has harmonica on.
Nice.
But the main one was always When the Levee Breaks. We play that every night, almost every show. And I did like almost 20 something tours, 25 tours with them over 8 years. So I got to do it hundreds of times. We'd play When the Levee Breaks, Bring It On Home. We played a handful of times, but Nobody's Fault But Mine. We played on this tour with Cheap Trick. We were the opening band. Cheap Trick was the middle support, direct support, and then it was Foreigner. It was Foreigner's 40th anniversary tour. We were doing like 40 cities, and Cheap Trick would come out and watch the show, the opening band, because it was the Zeppelin. We played all Zeppelin, and they were, they would check it out each night.
Right.
Because they always hang out because they're fucking cool.
Hanging out because they're cool, the coolest people ever.
Basically, it all goes back to Cheap Trick for a lot of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so a couple shows into it, Robin came up to me with his tech Mark. He just came up to me. I was in the middle of tuning, and I he was right in front of me, and I was like, "Hey." I didn't even know it was him because I wasn't. He was so close. I was like, oh. He's like, hey. He's like, I was wondering if you'd be interested in playing a song with us. And I was like, fuck yeah, are you kidding me? Oh my god, I was like, I couldn't contain my like. I was just like, wow, what? I was like, and he gave me a song. He said, oh, check out this song, and it was a song that. It's off the top of my head, I can't remember it. Really cool song off of one of their 80s records that I had never heard before. And I listened to it, and I was like, wow, there was like a key change in it. It actually required for me to play it on 3 different harmonicas. So I was learning this thing. It was the bridge part had a harmonica thing, and it was, I learned it, I nailed it, I practiced it, day and night for, about a week or two. I could do it in my sleep. And then the tour was going on. We were going on and on with the tour. And I was like, I get Robin. I was like, are we going to do this thing? He's like, yeah. But it's like, it was that point that they didn't even really come up to the show sound checks. They were just kind of like not showing up for sound checks and stuff. So we have to sit and learn this song. And it's going to take some time because we haven't played it since the 80s. And there's a key change. It's like a whole thing, And I was like, oh, okay. And another couple of weeks went on, and I was like, well, I guess it's not going to happen, And I was like, I was like, I was like, what a bummer that is, And
it's a thought that counts.
Yeah. I was like, okay, I kind of give up on it. And then we were like about a week to the end of the tour, maybe a week and a half or so, and we're in Salt Lake City, and it's just after Soundcheck and after dinner, and I'm walking to the stage to set up the top of the show for the bottom thing, and I run into Robin. He runs into me. He's like, "Yep." He's like, "Tonight's the night." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, we're gonna have you on tonight." And I'm like, "Whoa!" He's like, the song by the Small Faces. What you gonna do about it, right? I'm like, I was like, "Not really, I don't know it." And he's like, "Oh," it's in one key. So you just have to use one harmonica. And he's like, yeah, we did a version of it. We recorded it, we've never released it. He said, I'll send it to you. So he sends me their demo of it. I downloaded it on my phone, and I'm setting up the stage. I'm putting the waters out and the towels and tuning everything. I'm listening to the song. I'm like, holy shit. And I'm at that point of the show where I'm just setting the stage, and then I get a tap on my shoulder from Tom, the bass player, and he's like, hey man, would you mind coming into the dressing room for a few minutes? We want to go over the song with you. And I was like, holy shit. Okay, the show's gonna start in like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and I'm like, okay. I go in their dressing room, and they're like, on the two like little couches facing each other. They're like in a kind of a circle, and I sat down, and we went over it a couple times, and they had the bass player from Whitesnake, Mike Devon, who I knew from, he was previously in the Bonham show. He was the bass player on the first tour at Bonham, and they asked him to do background vocals. So we worked out these background parts, and maybe 5 or 6 minutes we rehearsed it, and just went through it once, talked about where it was going to end, and that was it. I went out and did the show with the Zeppelin show with Bonham. Did my 2 songs with him, packed the shit down, set change, and blistering hot heat, in the middle of the summer show. They had me out in the middle of the set. They actually recorded it for me. Their front of house guy, I forget whose name I can't remember right now, which is not cool.
Was it who's the front of house guy, Annie? I feel like I have his card in my wallet.
Oh,
right
it's
now.
Bill.
That's it.
Bill.
Bill Cozy, right?
Bill Cozy, that's right.
That's it, Bill. Because I remember Billy and Bill. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, some people took some pictures, and there's some snippets of like video of it, like, and I was like, oh, that's cool, you know. I wish somebody would have got it. And then the next day he comes to me and he's like, hey man, because they record every show, you know, on Pro Tools. So he's like, he mixed it down for me. He gave me this killer recording of it.
That's great.
I think we're gonna have to play that at some point.
Yeah. I actually got this year. A guy who I do that Lou Reed show with, he's got a radio show, and he's a huge Cheap Trick fan. Keith Roth, he does a radio show in New Jersey. He had interviewed Robin last year, and I had done an EP of my own music, and I wanted him to play it, you know, on his radio show. So he's like, yeah, send it to me. And I was like, oh, I'll send you the Cheap Trick recording too. Just because I know you're a fan, you know, and I wanted to play it for you. And he was like, holy shit, I gotta play this on my show. You think we could play it? I was like, well, let me ask Robin if it's okay. If he gives us permission. And don't you know, man, because they are the coolest people in the world.
They're the coolest.
He's like, yeah, man, go ahead. Let him play it on the radio. I was like, wow. So it was great. You know, it gave me like this whole exposure for my EP on this rock radio show with Robin's. Yeah, it was really cool. As you know, they're the coolest people.
Yeah.
We could do probably a whole show on just Cheap Trick.
Right? Yeah.
We really could.
Yeah.
But man, that's a dream scenario for anybody in our positions as teching, touring crew. Yeah, we say the word roadie because, you know, we're you know, in the industry, but that's sort of like a slide. There's really a tech aspect about what we do. I never claim to be the world's greatest tech, all right? I say this all the time, but I'm a good roadie. There's a whole roadie lifestyle. And for someone like in those positions, that's the dream scenario, you know? It's just like, yeah, sure. I'll play with one of the greatest bands ever that I've loved since I'm a child.
Yeah.
Oh,
basically,
man.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can just talk about them all day. They're so cool. Sorry, I have to pee. Do you have anything you want to talk to? Do you have anything you want to say? There's so much shit I can ask you before we get to some of the people you work for. But you know, we'll get into you know, the man himself soon. But let me go.
Okay, why don't we talk about like your start, I guess, with the Blackhearts and where your connection was there? Was it through SIR? Because I know we also had Matt Brown with us, and he was a Lou Reed connection with you. So I'm not sure if that's how that happened.
Well, it's interesting with Matt Brown. Because I knew Beef and Joe Muller, and I've known Dougie Needles since before he was in the Blackhearts. He used to work at SIR.
Right.
And with Joan having her locker at SIR, I kind of knew it all, and I just knew everybody because they would always come in to Billy, and it was just like for so many years.
Right.
And then at one point, I guess it was 5 years ago. It was actually 5 years ago. I filled in for somebody. Mm-hmm. We did a couple shows in we did one in Memphis, and then we went somewhere else.
Yeah, I remember that.
It was on my birthday, so it was pretty wild. I just turned 50. I was like, this is pretty cool being out with Joan, you know, on my 50th birthday. So that's how that was my first time with the Blackhearts, but it was almost like family anyway at that point.
It's inevitable. It's inevitable.
And then later on, Matt Brown actually called me because he knew I was heavily into this SIR scene. And he was just like, hey, I hear Joan Jett is looking for somebody. And I was like, well, you know, you call Joe Muller right now, or I forget who I told him to call, but I'm the one who steered him that way because he wanted to be there. And Matt Brown.
I mean, he's another one that's very key to a lot of circles and a lot of very successful bands. He was behind a lot of that, and people, you know, you don't realize there's more to it than just the band, and he's one of those guys, you know. He's a fucking brilliant. I mean, he's part of the Lou crew. speaking of which, am I interrupting anything major, or can we get into
No.
your connection and your life path with the man himself, Lou Reed? Let's talk about that. So a little bio. Starting in 2004 at SIR, meeting Gary. I believe you were already involved with him at this point.
Yeah.
In 04?
I started with Lou in 2002.
And Dan Nicholson, and Monahan were all on the crew at that point, or no? Was Nicholson? Go ahead.
I actually, in 2003, they came in. I was lucky enough to be able to hire my friends for that gig.
Those are good guys.
Bass tech. Those are great guys. It was funny. We needed a bass tech. I wanted Dan to be on there really bad, and we got him. And they weren't going to have a monitor engineer for the tour. They were going to have because it was just Lou, a cello player, and his bass player. And another guitar player who played like a synthy thing, but it was a small configuration, and they were like, "Oh, we don't need a monitor guy. The guy could do it from front of house." This guy Frank, he could do the monitors from front of house, and we were in rehearsal. We went over like probably 40, 50 songs, and it was all these different, of course, major different settings for the monitors. The digital scenes they were supposed to keep. And the one night, 2 nights before the last rehearsal, like day and night rehearsals for weeks, he loses all the scenes, the front of house guy. So Luke comes in the next day and everything is total chaos, and he loses it. He lost it.
This is the classic loses it.
Yeah, and the tour manager, the production manager, Bill Berger. He was.
Oh, I haven't heard his name.
He was afraid to even come in the room to tell what's going on. It's like we need a monitor guy at the very last minute to go do a world tour, and just by chance the night before, me, Dan Nicholson, and Dan Monahan were out drinking and talking about it, and Dan Monahan was like, "Hey, if you guys ever need a monitor guy, let me know." And sure enough, I was like, "I think I got a guy for you." Yeah, and then that's how that happened. I think I got a guy, and he came in and Lou interrogated him. "Who have you worked for?" He wanted to know like what his resume was. Screaming.
He had no choice at that point. It was just for fun, I guess.
Oh, what a trip! And that was my first world tour too. It was amazing.
Now
and
looking
up, that was Lou's last major tour, where he was touring for a record.
Was that the Berlin tour?
No, the Berlin tour. The Berlin tour was like they did the Berlin show. They filmed it, made a record out of it, and then they toured that. They went to Australia for a couple of weeks with. Which I didn't do that tour because I was touring with Justin Timberlake that year. And then the following year, they toured Europe for 6 weeks. And I did that tour, but it wasn't a world tour.
Like the
2003 tour. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say you were in the actual Berlin movie because I remember being at a gas station looking at it, and I think I saw either your hand or definitely your name on the back. And I was like, I know, this is my buddy. And they were like, everybody in the gas station was like, huh? I was like, never mind.
Yeah, I've got a 2-second cameo in that movie, running out, giving him his guitar, and that was wild. That was a wild time. And we did like 5 shows at St. Anne's Warehouse, and
I remember that.
Yeah.
I was driving. I drove and picked it up. That was my first exposure. Well, I had been around for, the whole 25th Street scene, as all three of us know. You could be walking around 25th Street any God-given day and see Joan Jett, Lou Reed, Walter Becker, Cyndi Lauper, or The
Debbie
Edge. Debbie Harry and the Edge all on the same day, or Eric Clapton. Anybody. So I'd been around Lou personally. My first interaction with him was at 25th Street, where he kind of had a cigarette hanging out of his mouth and was like, "Hey, what's up?" Because he saw me 3 or 4 times at the studio at that point, and I was like, "What's up?" You know, because I wasn't going to get too crazy. You know, I knew the position I was in, but then I remember going to St. Anne's Warehouse when I was a driver. As you know, we all started out as at one point. If you know, we're working for SIR, and it's like Lou's crew, the Blackheart crew, TSO, Billy Squire, Cyndi Lauper, and Bob Dylan, which was actually what I wanted to say was St. Anne's was cool, but I remember picking you up in a church and you coming out and you're like, dude, fucking Bob Dylan's in there playing a goddamn fucking church organ, you know, B3. And I was like, Bob Dylan's in there. He's like, yeah, that's what this gig is for. I had no idea. It wasn't on the paperwork, you know. And you were on that gig too. It's like, yeah, Lou Reed, St. Anne's, Bob Dylan on 23rd Street in a church, you know. But I'm sorry, the St. Anne's, just going there, that was like my first time peeking into the world.
Hey, Beef, can you pull down that mic from your headphones?
Is that what makes a difference?
Yes, major difference.
Oh, I didn't know it worked like that.
Yeah, you're good. Now it sounds beautiful. But you're good. It sounded fine before, but we're so good. Carry on.
Go ahead with St. Anne's Warehouse. I'm so sorry. St. Anne's. I'm sorry.
St. Anne's. Yeah, it was pretty wild. The St. Anne's show, Bob Ezrin produced it, along with Hal Wilner. Bob Ezrin produced the original record. It was wild time. And that was a transition point for me because that was like the last gig I did with Lou as his guitar tech. Because after that gig, I transitioned to Justin Timberlake for all of 2007. As a matter of fact, the second to last show at St. Anne's on a Saturday night, I had to leave after we did the taping. We did 2 shows that day. And then I had to go to Saturday Night Live to meet the manager and the crew and Justin Timberlake, because I was about to go out to California to start the rehearsals for that tour. So that day, the two Berlin shows. Then I went to Saturday Night Live and went through all that shit.
Wow.
You know, yeah, it was crazy.
That was crazy.
That's insanity.
Yeah.
It's almost as insane as me keeping this fucking microphone up the whole time. Sorry, I can't get over that. I'm such an idiot. Oh, we're gonna have to put subtitles on this. This is the big show with Gary Hood.
You can still hear you.
But I remember at that point in 2007, I was going, and then we'll get to Annie's time as we go through the timeline. But 2007, I was so full on with Blackhearts. And I remember hearing that you took the Justin Timberlake gig, and I was like, I mean, I was like, whoa, Lou Reed is the top of the top. And then I was like, but now you've moved on to pop star status, you know?
Yeah, I wanted to do one of those tours, you know. Lou would go out. He would go out and do like 2 or 3 weeks here. And, you know, he was usually good for a summer tour, which was 5 or 6 weeks. And it was always Europe, you know, which I really loved. But the Timberlake thing was 12 months, you know, solid going, you know, all over the place. And it was a good opportunity for me to make money. I was trying to, you know, buy a place and stuff. So I needed to get money together and stuff. And then I took the gamble. You know, I was, at that point I had been working for Lou as his tech for 5 years. And I loved him dearly, but in those first 5 years, we definitely had a few times where we, like anybody who was close with Lou, eventually you were going to have a brawl with him, you know? And it all depends upon, you know, how you recovered from it, you know? If you were a gentleman, you know, and, you know, you were respectful, even though you were just screaming at each other and cursing each other out, you know? I could go on and on.
That reminds me of a couple of times on the Black Heart Crew.
But I remember you telling me a story about you having to build a pedal board for Prince, like last minute.
Oh,
you know?
no.
I never heard this one. Go for it.
It's really cool.
Yeah. This was like, I guess it was like 2015 or 16. And I was living in Vegas at the time. I was for SIR. I was doing the backline tech stuff for the iHeartRadio festivals, which is a big 2-3 day festival with like tons of gear, trucks, loads of shit. And, the SIR would send guys from New York and LA, and I was already in Vegas. So I was there, so I would do the gig. And Mary J. Blige was playing, and she was going to have Prince come in as a surprise, unannounced guest on one song, So Prince was in the middle of a residency in Chicago. So he just wanted to come with his guitar. He wasn't bringing a tech or his pedal board, just his guitar. So they said, "You're a guitar tech. Why don't you take care of take care of Prince for this thing?" And I said, "Okay. Well, you're going to have to build his pedal board for him." And I said, "Oh, okay." And they sent me a picture of it, and it was it was kind of involved. It was like horseshoe shaped, and it had like 10 different effects on it, and some of them were out of production. Get this pedal board together, which wasn't that big a deal. I cut some wood up, and the shape he had it, and there was a picture of it from an internet picture they sent me. So I had some time to put that together. But now it's coming to the time of the show, and it's like, okay, we're going to rehearse with Mary J. Mary J's playing on Sunday, but we're going to rehearse on Friday, off location. Loading was on Friday at the MGM arena in Vegas. We were loading in on Friday, but I was going to go off to another location and rehearse with this pedal board, and the whole deal with Prince. He had a couple amps, a wireless system, and this pedal board. Rehearsal comes, and he doesn't show up. But they told me ahead of time he's not going to show up. Okay, it cuts to Sunday. Now I have his whole thing set up, and I'm ready to to rock. I'm pretty confident. I've done my homework. I've contacted his ex-techs and stuff, and
here comes a curveball.
Yeah. And I said, okay, I think this is ready. This is cool. So I'm ready to go. It's soundcheck time, and there's like 20 different acts, and the doors are at 7, and everything is very scheduled. It's like Mary J gets 20 minutes. The next guy gets 20 minutes, and whoever it was, Ricky Martin, I don't even know what the hell it was. There's so many bands, like big superstars. Set up all this stuff, tape it all down, and get it ready for Prince. And he's not there. And it's like, okay, they start the sound check, and it's like, well, at 2:00 we have to spin the stage, no matter what. And he's still not there. He shows up at 2:02 or something like that, like 2 minutes after the fact. And it's just like, here he is. And I was like, great, I see him there. And he looks really strange. I'm used to Prince looking a certain way, but he's wearing like these big glasses, and his hair is all like afroed out. Like,
yeah, that's what happened when I saw him.
And I was like, wow, that's really weird. There was a commotion because they were like, no, we can't do it. We got to spin the stage, blah, blah, blah. I look up his guitar, which he had put right in front of his pedal board on the floor there. All of a sudden, they just disappeared. He was gone. The guitar was gone. We had to spin the stage. I had to go to all the stuff up, his whole rig. Okay, he's gone, but he's set up his whole rig in his dressing room, which is a little trailer out in the parking lot of the MGM. Set it up in his dressing room. So it's a little tiny trailer. 2 amps, his wireless system, and his pedal board. Takes up most of this thing, and I have it, and it's rocking. We have it set, and I'm going over it all day. It's okay, and I'm doing all the other stuff too, because we have full backlines for all these other bands. But my concentration's on this. He never shows up. The show starts. The doors open. The show starts. He's still not there. Now it's a spinning stage, so it's the band just got off. They take their stuff off, and they the spinning stage, and he's still not there. And it's Mary J's. It's just about time to load up Mary J's stuff. I run into Huggy, Mary J's production
Oh
manager.
yeah, Huggy.
Yeah. And he's like, "Where's Prince's shit? Why is it on the stage?" I was like, "Well, it's in the dressing room. He wants to check it out before he puts it up there." He's like, "Well, we don't have time for that. You got to get it up there right now. You got to do it right now. He's not going to ruin this show. He's not going to ruin this for Mary J." Okay. So I get a bunch of guys to help me roll all this stuff up because it's out in the parking lot now. And it's a ramp, but it's a walk, and it's a long walk to the stage, backstage. I get it up on stage, get it all taped down, everything's set, and Dave Meyer, the stage manager,
Myers, yeah.
he comes over with his headphones and his mouthpiece. He's like, "Hey," he's like, "Prince wants this stuff in his dressing room," and I'm like, and I said, it can't happen. Huggy said it's got to be now. It's like it can't happen. He's like, Prince wants to speak to you right now.
What?
Yeah, and I'm like, holy shit, So I follow the PA out to the parking lot. They knock on the door of his dressing room. It's this little tiny dressing room, and it's this. His assistant, her name was Crystal. She's a beautiful woman in this very exotic gown, tall.
Naturally.
Yeah. She comes to the door. She's like, "Yes." And I'm like, Prince's guitar tech, and she's like, "Okay, hold on one second." She goes in, whispers something to Prince. She comes back out and she says, "Prince wants you to get his guitar out of the SUV." Okay. So the chauffeur guy opens it up. I take it out of the case, and it's like completely detuned to be on an airplane, And I'm like, I go knock on it, and he's like, "Well, he wants you to tune it." I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, all my tuning stuff is inside. I can tune it by ear, but it's not going to be on pitch." So I go running into the MGM and tune the thing up, get it all right, go running back out with his guitar because now it's like she's about to spin and do the show in a little while, it's everything set now. Knock on the door. She comes to the door again, like it's a surprise. It's like, here with the guitar, and okay. And then he comes out, and he's dressed in this this yellow outfit. He looks like a fly or something with these glasses that look like fly eyes, and his hair rolls like that. He has this staff in his hand, like a Moses staff out, and I'm like, and he hands the staff to her, and I found out, that he had a problem after he passed. That they were telling him he had a lot of problems with his hip or something. That's why he had the staff there. I was like, holy shit, that is fucking weird. It was almost as tall as him, and he hands it to her, and she's holding it. I give him the guitar. It was a hollow body guitar, it's some kind of Gibson, and he's like, he puts it up to his ear, and he's like, oh, okay. And he just starts walking towards the stage, and I'm kind of walking with him, trying to say, all right, cool, man, cool. And it's like, and then I realized that I haven't put the radio pack on it, the wireless pack on the guitar, and there's on his strap, there's no pouch or anything, to put it in. So I'm like, what the fuck am I gonna do? So as we're going, I said, listen, man, because he's got the guitar strapped on his back already. He's walking with it, it's on his side. And I was like, I have to put this pack on there, and all I have is like electrical tape to put it on. So as he's walking, I'm holding this pack in my hand, following him, stepping with him, and just like taking this E-tape and putting this pack, and I'm going around and around and around and around to make sure it doesn't fall off, maybe like 10 times, It's on there. He goes up to his rig, and everyone's just standing around with their jaw open. It's just like, holy shit, there's Prince, And he, he tests out the pedals, and he tweaks the amp a little bit. And he says to me, he extends his hand out. He's like, shook my hand. He said, he did, not bad. So, oh, great, So now, Mary J. Blige, the stage spins like almost immediately. He's off on the side. He's not going to come in for like a couple songs, and they're playing that song "Nothing Compares to You" that he wrote that Sinead O'Connor
Oh
did.
yeah,
But now
Sinead,
Mary Jane's doing this killer version of it. And Prince is standing on the side of the stage. He's watching Mary J, and I'm standing next to him. And he's like playing the guitar, and he's like, "Hey," he says to me, "How come I don't hear myself?" You know, because his amp is on the stage, and the band is already playing, and it's blaring away that first song, you know. And he's like, he wants to jam along off on the side, but he can't hear it. And I'm like, I had no answer, you know. I didn't know if it was like, you know, I was hoping that it was muted in the house. That's why he didn't hear it, because he wasn't wearing in-ears. You know, he was just like listening to the house and he didn't hear it. And then I started wondering, is like, I hope the wireless pack didn't get fucked up or something's fucked up, you know, because they're going to announce it. He's going to come out and just start playing a solo, you know, and then start dancing around. And I was like, if this guitar doesn't turn on, this is going to be a tragedy, you know. But
this is a great story.
Yeah, it's probably my greatest roadie story.
This is the best story I ever heard.
It's like the definition of like Crewicide.
This is the definition of what we're doing this for. Please continue. I'm sorry.
So, you know, there were about 2-3 songs into the set, and it's like, ladies and gentlemen, you know, I want to introduce the greatest musician that ever lived, Prince. You know, and people are going crazy, and thank God, you know, thank God. This is why I still am somewhat employed in non-pandemic times. It worked. It worked. And he came out and he killed it. And I was just like, killed it. Comes off the stage, and I'm like, giving him the international sign of, give me your guitar, man. You know, I'll take it. My hand's up in the air, and he's like, I'm giving him like this, you know, go on. And he just keeps on walking. And I'm like, oh, you know, and he's going to leave. And he's got the wireless pack on there. I was like, oh, shit, I got to get this pack over there. Like, you know, they're going to be pissed. So I follow him all the way down the ramp. And he gets to the SUV, and I was like, let me help you put that in the case, man, because it's in the back of the SUV. And it's like, I just got to get this pack off of here. And I didn't have a knife on me or anything. Because I just took the E-tape and I just wrapped it around like 10 times. It was like I couldn't get it off. You know? And he's just looking at me like, and I'm like, oh yeah, man. He's like, I finally like jerked, ripped it out. You know, like grunting, trying to get it off there. He says to me, he's like, hey man, are you gonna be with us later on tonight? And I said, I don't think so. No one's told me anything. You know, he said, well, make sure my manager has your digits. That's what he said. And I said, oh, okay. And his manager was the beautiful lady, you know, Crystal, in the gown with the staff. You know, I was like, okay, I'll give it to her. You know, shook his hand, and he got back in the SUV and drove off in the moonlight.
Wow,
that was it. That's my Prince story.
Holy! I don't know. I don't even know what could beat that. I'm serious. Like, there's nothing.
We can touch on. We actually had Donnie on last week at WrestleMania when Joan's whole rig and Hal's rig wouldn't turn on right before they played Bad Reputation.
Oh, that was something. Yeah, we didn't. Nothing was plugged in.
Yeah.
No, nothing was on.
Right. Nothing was.
Stage right wasn't on.
Stage right, the power wasn't out. They put the risers out, but the stagehand guys didn't bring out the power. But and then when they did, the bass rig didn't work because when they were moving it, the speaker cable got snapped, like it got hit, you know, off the rolling riser. So I had to. I forget. I went to the spare or something.
I remember both of us were behind there checking every wire.
I remember, everybody was checking everything. I remember Gary, like, everybody was in like, I was like, I'm doing something too. It was insanity.
And they were yelling at us like, get off the stage. We got to go now. And you're like, there's no power.
30 second set change.
Yeah.
30-second sec change.
But it worked though.
Getting helicoptered in. Yeah. It was crazy.
Yeah.
It worked. It worked.
It went. Yeah.
That was a very tense moment.
It took a couple of years off my life. That's for sure.
For what? 2 days, 1 3-minute song. And we're like, ah.
Oh
right.
My God.
That was worth it though. It was worth it though. That one was a highlight of a lot. I mean, bringing it back and into the circle, like what we do, how we got into this. It doesn't really matter, but we want to be here. We know we want to do this. And just a day like that was like, it made every shitty gig ever. Just like, all right, well, at least I did WrestleMania. You know what I mean? It was insane. It was a good show, man. I loved how I loved being with you that time. That was my first real Joan gig with everybody. Like Gary, although I've known you since 2004, we've known each other.
Beef.
Yeah.
No, that's not exactly true. The very, very first gig you ever did with Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, you were drum teching. You remember we were at some field in New Jersey?
Yes.
And I gave you like a crash course on stuff.
Wait, were you working for Joan?
No, I was working for SIR.
But that's right. You did give me a crash course.
So I was like, dude, it was like, I think one of your first drum tech things. I was like, dude, you got
it was my first ever gig. My first ever gig. Yeah. You just totally reminded me about that. You're so right. I asked you, I was like, Gary, you did, and you showed me.
I remember.
I totally fucking forgot about that. Oh, and I went to Mountainside, and then you know what? I might have gotten that confused with Billy, because when Old Man Crater, as I refer to him now, Old Man Crater, I got there and he was like, you got any weed? Good, you know, this and that. And then we get to the gig, and I'm like, you know, you had showed me exactly like, you know, what to look for and what to like, you know, keep an eye out for. But Old Man Crater was showing me how to put Tommy's drums the way he plays them. You didn't have any idea about that, you know?
No.
So like I was
just general tuning and stuff, you know?
Yeah. So I was like at Old Man Crater's behest of what to do. And he was so erratic. And that was the Smithereen and They Might Be Giants. And it was over. And that was it. The last time I ever thought I would ever going to work for them. And never thought I would be here, you know. I never thought I'd do some of the things I did, you know, and it's all because of her. I'm sure Annie could say the same.
Yeah.
It's insanity.
Yeah.
But that crash course. Oh.
That's so fun.
I dropped all my ashtray. Sorry. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Well, to kind of end on current times thing, where do you think things are going in this industry? What's your theory on like touring coming up?
I don't know if the summer is going to work. I think if people get vaccinated, maybe by the fall, people will feel safe enough to go out on the road again and do stuff. I think. And I mean, I personally wouldn't want to play a gig or do something until I get a vaccine. I don't, you know, because you can't at a concert. You can't mask up. It's impossible. You know, it's like everyone's screaming and having a good time, and it's so dangerous for the. Look what happened to Charlie Pride. You know, the country singer. Old guy, but still in great shape. He was still doing shows. They brought him to this country music hall awards or whatever, CMAs. He was singing live. People in the audience were singing along with no masks on. And this guy, you know, died of COVID in a couple of weeks after that. It's like, it's too, I don't know. It's not worth it for the performers, I don't think. I know everyone is dying. I mean, financially.
Yeah, we know that one.
It's hard to just the virtual shows that, you know, I watched a whole bunch of them, and it's not the same, you know. It's
right.
It's not.
And how many are bands gonna really do of that? You know, like you could do them once in a while, but you're not gonna, even bigger bands like try to get back into it. How much you're gonna really do it? You know.
Yeah, I think it's going to be another. You know, I think by the fall, I think there'll be fall tours. It's not that bad, you know. It's. I think by August, September, people will be regularly doing shows, and I think the summer it'll be going on. But
But like, what happens if someone on a bus gets sick? A band or a crewmate? What do you do? Quarantine that whole bus? You know?
That's it. Right.
So there's a lot of factors and a lot of, even
I
if it was a smaller tour, small band, small venue, small cities, it's, it's going to be tough to get back into it.
No, I've been working like doing stuff in as a grip on movie sets. The movie industry has not shut down. I mean, they're still doing a lot of things with that, and it's like when you do that, they test you twice a week. There's people on the job sites. You heard about the Tom Cruise thing with him going freaking out?
Yeah.
That's how it is. They have people looking at everybody, making sure you're not standing close together, and everyone's wearing a mask, and it's a whole protocol that's got to be done. And I can't imagine that being done with the music business. It's traveling, it's just impossible.
I think what you're talking about with the whole Tom Cruise thing, people, the tabloids and the media, I know we're going in a whole different direction, but it pertains to the industry. The tabloid and the media obviously blow it up because it's Tom Cruise, but honestly, I fucking think he's right. And I'm not saying all the shit that he said about, producers and this and that, like the weight of the world is on his fucking, the weight of the world is on his shoulders. But think about it. Tom Cruise is a guy like him, a movie like him is going to employ a lot of fucking people. And there's a lot of people counting on a production with him, with the star power of him. And he does have a lot of, okay, you're blowing up, whatever. But what he's saying is right. If we can get this together, we can live and survive, and we can continue to do it. They're testing these new ways now because we're in its infancy. The industry is going to be so different in 5 years. That's my both music, television, and music. Music has been changing with Napster and downloads, and now live. It's all going to be doing smaller venues, all streaming and shit like that. But Tom Cruise, he had a point, man, and you're on the sets, so you fucking know.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's tough because they're trying to do it right, and then it's like it just takes one thing to screw it up for everyone, and it sets everyone back. Like there's been clubs out here that were trying to do shows and they got shut down, and now that one thing ruins it for all the restaurants and bars that had music here.
And that's why we can't have nice things.
Exactly why we can't have nice things.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's crazy about the situation I was just in, since October, I was doing these different movie sets. We're basically building sets for these movies, which is pretty extensive, pretty involved, and gigantic, and lots of people. And
large scale.
Three times I was. First time I had to be quarantined because one of the guys I was working with right next to me in a car. I went on a ride with him. He called in sick the next day with like 101 fever and had full blown COVID. I had to quarantine for 14 days. Came back on a different crew. Another guy I was working with, he tested positive, but they didn't quarantine me this time. They quarantined these 3 other guys. We started out with a crew of 12. By the time we finished, there was like 4 guys left because they kept on, they put you like in. If you have 12 people on a crew, they come up with this thing like, okay, you're in a pod with these other 2 guys, But even though you're not, you're working with everybody, but they just put you like in this, with these 3 guys. So when the first guy tested positive, the guys in his pod got to go home on 2 weeks vacation. I was the guy working with him, but since I wasn't officially in his pod, I didn't get to go quarantine. The second time. And it happened again. Yeah, it's crazy. And then you're sitting there. I've been coming home and staying away from my family and my wife and my kid, and staying in because I don't know if I have it or not. And I'm just going around my house with a mask on because I was just working with people that have had it. 3 different occasions since October.
Right.
So, yeah, it's crazy. It's nerve-wracking. It's going to be really, really nerve-wracking, and
Mhm.
Tough. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's with not traveling, like not in a touring act, So that's when it been, because even say you got sick in Milwaukee, what do? You can't fly home. You probably get stuck there for 2 weeks, It's like, what do you do?
No, everyone's going to have to get vaccinated and show proof. And then people who want to go to the shows are also going to have to, at least for about a year, say, yeah, here I am. I could go to the show. I could go to my job. I could do this or that because I got vaccinated, That's what I see.
I also I agree with Gary, but I think that's going to be on the offshoot Crewicide conspiracies and the actual truth. But that's a whole nother thing.
I don't think anyone knows.
No, but you're right. It will be like that. I also just to bring it back, what you were saying about showing vaccination and this and that. I also think that before that even happens here, you're going to see it happen in other countries, or they're going to try and at least you're going to see two things. One, countries are going to do it and countries that aren't going to do it. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I kind of had a point there, and then I thought about the other point, and I was like, I should shut my mouth because it doesn't make sense. But I was going to say, I think that music might start off in other countries like Australia and New Zealand where there is no COVID.
Right.
You're going to see huge markets all of a sudden, markets like those. I don't know why I'm talking in those terms, but markets like those.
Good luck getting in there without a passport that says you're stamped. You're vaccinated. You're not going to get to New Zealand.
Again, you're gonna see a lot of that. You're gonna need the stamp. You're gonna need the fucking papers, and it might be lucrative. It might not. This business, you get to travel and live like a rock star, but not always paid like a rock star. But we do get to have the perks of it. I
just got my new passport this year too. It took like 6 months to get.
I have to start with that. That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, do it now so you get it in 6 months.
I keep having this dream I keep having this one dream, and we'll talk about it more and more as years go on. But I keep having this one dream that I get a phone call and it's the boss, and it's like, "Hey, we're going to South Africa tomorrow. Are you and the rest of the crew available?" I said, I certainly am. And then I swear, Gary, you're in this dream. Annie's in the dream. Billy's in the dream. Sometimes Joe Muller's in the dream. You know what I mean? And sometimes my friends are in the dream. And I'm like, they're like, so, and then it'd be like, all right, you're going to meet the crew at the lockup. And I'm like, okay. And then I'll get another call in the dream. And it's like, hey, we're moving the spot to my house. Meet me there. We're taking the car. And I'm like, how do we go to South Africa in a car? And every time I get into the boss's car, we go under the car travels underneath like a fucking like a James Bond car, and we're halfway to Africa in this dream, and the same thing happens. I forget my passport.
Don't forget your passport.
Yeah, like the bus is in this. We're like traveling under the fucking Atlantic Ocean to fucking the west coast of Africa for a gig, and I don't have my passport.
I do have a real forgot your passport story. I'm sure Billy Crater has forgotten his passport.
I got a good one. It was on either Center or Warped Tour, and we were crossing into. There's a couple of border crossing stories I have, but this one was bad. It was about 2 days before we were in California or something. We were going into Vancouver, possibly Alberta. And that was the famous incident where we went to Boston Airport. Zach had just got on the crew, Route 1 with Billy. You ever hear that story, Route 1?
Think so.
Where Billy and Zach rode in a car for the first time together alone. And I went in the other car to go drop it off, and it was a whole thing. The next day we get to the terminal, and it calls and says, they just changed the terminal. You have to go. We're unloaded with Skycap. We're going to San Francisco. I lose my phone in the taxi, And as we're going into the gate of the next terminal, after Billy pulled it all together, I go to pull out my passport to show the lady to go to California because we were going into Alberta or something next. Because I never used my ID at that time. I was using my passport. I'm like, where's my passport? I left it in fucking at home on the table before we went to Boston. And I don't know. I thought I was going to die. I showed them my ID. I got on the plane, and that's the infamous day that Billy had that problem on the plane, which we could talk about another time. And my father, whose birthday is today, God bless him and rest his soul, he worked for U.S. Airways at the time. And he shipped my passport out that night on a flight to San Luis Obispo or San Francisco, and then it got UPS'd right to my hotel room next day by 2:00 by Soundcheck.
Wow.
Nice.
That's
nice.
crazy.
The old man.
I feel like not recently, but in the past few years, you did a one-off gig with us, and you showed up, I think, with an expired motorcycle ID at the airport.
Yes. Which is so funny because this year I actually, and not only was it expired, oh my God, that's right. Oh, I totally forgot about that.
Mm-hmm. That just reminded me of that.
That was somewhere with Kenny, I believe.
Yeah, that was totally with Kenny. He's like, what? Why?
Then Kenny lost his, I think Kenny lost his ID, which was in his pocket the whole time. Another thing. These crazy stories. But yeah, I showed up with the wrong ID. I had an expired motorcycles permit.
Mm-hmm.
And I will show you now after years. And that was years ago because I got my first motorcycle, oh my God, 6 years ago. Finally, this year was the year I actually got my motorcycle license.
Nice.
And I look a lot different in that picture. That's funny. That was funny, Annie. Thank you for reminding me that.
You're welcome.
That's what this is all about. That's what this is all about.
Yes. Well, I think we'll probably
funny.
wrap it up in a few, but Gary, do you have any advice for when the industry's somewhat normal, I guess, for maybe someone just starting out? What would be your advice for someone like who wants to like be a guitar tech or something like that? Like, did you have like a nice little bit of advice you could leave off on?
Work for a backline company. You know, if you're a guitar tech, like maybe like an SIR perhaps if they survive.
If they survive, yeah.
They'll survive. They'll survive.
I hope so, but I mean, or something like that. You know, I'm sure there's some kind of backline company in any town, USA, somewhere.
Production, backline production,
or you know, work at a club or whatever. But if you want to get into a guitar tech thing, something like that, like an SIR type of thing, or center stage.
I also, you could bleep that one out too. No, I'm just joking. No, we're joking. We're joking because we're going to have Joe Muller on the show too. And that was a big part of him. And I think you're forgetting the third one. You know, nurture your friends that are playing guitar and hopefully one of them becomes a real fucking famous guitar player in a band. And that's a good way to get into because half of the kids that I saw in the last 6-7 years didn't know what the fuck they were doing. And I was like, oh, who you work for, this and that. And they're like, hey, man, my friend put me on this gig. We grew up together because we were in a band in 8th grade. And that's all good. But you know what? There's guys like Gary and Annie that are serious about this shit. And we're like, all right, we wish we had that opportunity. But, you know, you're right. Go for the backline. Go for the production. Keep your eyes open and your mouth shut. Eyes and ears open, mouth shut, and stay 6 feet away. Stay at a safe distance from whoever you're working for because you don't want to get caught in the fucking orbit.
Well,
you know?
the first story I said tonight was my Johnny Winter thing. The guy asked me if I could do monitors, and I said, yeah, I could do that. Sometimes you got to do that. It's like,
fake it till you make it. That's
totally,
what I
100% do that.
Yeah.
Did that.
You do drums? Yeah, you do drums.
Yeah. My first gig, I was like, yeah, I do lighting, and the board I looked at, never saw it in my life. I was like, yeah, I could do this.
Sure.
Yeah.
I can
go
set
on your
up
phone,
drums.
look it up, and be like, okay, yep, sure.
What do you do? You went on your phone, and I went to Gary.
Yeah.
Yeah. You gotta be, have a good work ethic, but you really have to have that kind of chutzpah.
It's all about the attitude. All about the attitude.
You really got to have that, like, if that's
I could do this.
Separates the, the small cats from the big cats.
So one more thing I want to say, because I did want to get to this. Gary, will you come on again and play a song for us and premiere your Cheap Trick song? I'm sure we can get permission from Robin and Dax and the crew.
Yeah, anytime.
Awesome.
I would love to. Check out my stuff on Bandcamp.
Yes.
What's your
I've been
Bandcamp
very
link?
productive. Gary Hood at Bandcamp.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for coming on. Miss ya. I hope we see you
miss you
soon.
Yeah, soon.
Yes.
A couple, one more season.
Yeah.
Spring, and then we'll get to end of the summer. I think we'll start seeing each other.
I hope so.
I
I
hope
hope
so,
so.
too.
I know
safe.
I'm looking at you straight down the boulevard, because that's where at the end of that boulevard, Gary Hoodland. At the end of the boulevard, down yonder, right down the eye.
Where are you, Beef? Where are you living right now?
Yeah, no one look up where Beef lives.
But I'm on Queen. No one cares. But you know what? I look straight down Queens Boulevard to Jamaica and Floral Park. But I love you to death, Gary. I'm gonna give it up. I'd say
Me too.
there's
Love
not
you too,
enough
Manny.
there's not enough time to talk through him. That's why we're gonna have to have him on again. And like Donnie,
Anytime.
he is family. And saying that, I think give it up to Annie.
All right. Well, thank you guys all for tuning into the Crewicide podcast. Check us out at crewicide.com and all of the @Crewicide social media sites. And we'll see you next time. Thank you. All right. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Gary, it was good to
Bye.
see you, buddy.
See you here.
Crewicide! 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 Crewicide!